This episode of Return to Tradition was brought to you by the Saintmaker Catholic Life Planner Toolkit, a resource using Catholic wisdom and modern science to help you achieve that sanctity God is calling you to. Thousands of Catholics are on the Saintmaker journey, and you can join them with a 90-day risk-free trial offer backed with a 100% refund guarantee. Go to www.thesaintmaker.com/return to tradition to learn more and use promo code return to tradition to save 10%. Stories abound right now of a defiling of sacred spaces, and even the Eucharist, by clergy of the Church. This has been happening in the past few weeks with such frequency that it's actually hard to report on all of these stories separately without starting to sound like a broken record. So let's start here. The YouTube channel, Crevy Determined to be Catholic, reported on this story of a parish that was used as a yoga studio in a clear signaling to secular authorities that the church was fine with adopting pagan prayer poses just like the secularists were. And before you object to what I said about yoga, that's precisely what yoga is according to the masters of that practice itself. Take their word for it when they tell you what they believe, at least according to the traditional masters of it. Have at least that much respect for them, even if you know that their ideas conflict with the faith and are to be opposed and that the source of that stuff is demonic. At least acknowledge when they say they believe something that what it is that they believe, even if it's not true. That's a theme for us here today, by the way, since sacrilege is an expression itself. Engaging in sacrilege is practically speech. It tells the observer everything they need to know about what it is the person committing the act truly believes if they do so with the full consent and knowledge of the will. And so with that in mind, what does the priest who runs this parish truly believe by his actions? The parish is in Antwerp. It's St. James Church, and it looks like a cathedral that you might see in like a truly nice cathedral in a small American diocese that just happened to have been blessed with both a good budget and a bishop with traditional taste. And yes, for those asking, the yoga was done in front of the tabernacle and altar, because of course it was. Many such stories abound these days, to the point where it's hard to keep up with them. I was aware of that yoga story, but was prompted to cover it even a little late by a viewer who emailed me the link. Sorry for not responding, by the way. It's just that, frankly, I'm hesitant to click links in emails these days after an attempted phishing attack on my channel and on people I know, some of which was allegedly done by some fairly well-known Catholic organizations, by the way, so be wary. But enough of that. Like I said, that story isn't the only one like it. Here's another. This story has been shared on various social media pages, and I've even seen a YouTuber or two talk about it over on Twitter, but I do have to talk about this as well. The story came to my attention from something Father Z posted on his blog under the headline, "Another Novus Ordo Unique Expression," again in Italy. You know, like that story with the priest who said the Mass on a rubber floaty on a beach. You remember that? Lots of, shall we say, immodestly dressed people attending Mass on a beach in the water. See here, this time, this one for yourself. So the priest you see here is a priest of the unique expression of the Roman Rite. Note the Jimmy Martin-style stole he's wearing. He's saying Mass on the back of a bicycle, which is pretty bad and by itself would warrant me showing you this clip. But what you're seeing here is actually far worse than that, because note the wind and how it's blowing. He has the Eucharist there. He's using his bike as an altar. And what happens when you have lightweight objects in the wind when they come together? Here it is. The Eucharist floats off into the air and it flies away. Those are people handing him the Eucharist back after it hit the ground in an act of desecration. The priest, Father Fabio Corosina, has been on the radar for those combating heresy in Italy for years. As the website La Fede Quotidiana reported in an article about this priest back in 2015, quote, "You don't have to be a fundamentalist and integralist and unable to see people's lives." He said, "You must not make the mistake of erecting walls. We are all called to overcome barriers and to welcome and to keep the doors open in a continuous confrontation with the gospel. The church that transforms barriers into walls is not my church. It is the one against which I have fought and will continue to fight. I believe that the state must recognize James Martin unions, and even those between those who identify with certain sins that cry out to heaven for justice, because such folks must be protected." End quote. all so sadly predictable in the springtime of the synodal church of the new Advent. Nothing happened to him because of his statements back in 2015, because he's on the team with the modernists, so why should we expect anything to happen to him now? It's just an abuse of the Mass, an abuse of the Eucharist. As if apostate Rome cares about such things, folks. Apostate Rome cares so little about the salvation of souls that priests in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. have been ordered to give sacrilegious communion to the man I'll call Sleepy Creepy Caesar, a nickname suggested by a viewer. You know, that allegedly Catholic political leader in America who just labeled half the country as evil in a move that completely backfired politically in a glorious way. You know, that guy. Headline from Gloria TV. Cardinal orders priest to hand over sacrilegious communion. Cardinal Wilton Gregory, close friend of Ted McCarrick and protege of suspected Satanist Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, has ordered the priests of his diocese to commit a grave sin and help Sleepy Creepy Caesar condemn his own soul through invalidly receiving our blessed Lord in the most blessed sacrament to the altar. And he's ordered the priests of his diocese to be complicit in this. I hope that some of them have the courage to resist. From the article, quote, Washington Cardinal Wilton Gregory instructed priests in some, quote, unofficially yet clearly understood message not to deny communion to Sleepy Creepy Caesar, a notorious defender of the Moloch ritual, end quote. Sacrilegious communion is the norm in the church. It's not the exception. Our prelates preach the message of dare we hope all men are saved, except maybe for those who commit the unforgivable sins of rigidity, clinging to the same faith as our forebears, and sins against our so-called common home. Beyond those monsters, everyone is saved, or so is the messaging from apostate Rome these days. It's little wonder that parishes are emptying, since if dare we hope everyone but the most rigid are saved, then what's the point of going to Mass? What's the point of going to confession? Confession lines are empty, after all. While the Eucharist is being functionally desecrated, the early signs of Francis's Kazakhstan trip being a catastrophe are already obvious. Francis has embarked on a mission to encourage ecumenical dialogue, fraternity, and other values of the French Revolution in the place of the hard-hitting truth about the Catholic faith. Francis is meeting with the leaders of the quote-unquote ancient traditional religions of the world, specifically those who signed the Abu Dhabi Declaration about human fraternity back in 2019, as well as some others. That document has led to the nearly completed Abrahamic house for all three faiths that claim Abraham as their father, to worship on the same property but in three distinct buildings. And that's some sort of weird sign of ecumenical unity that really just denies any truth claims anyone's making. There is a meeting going on, by the way, in Kazakhstan that, at least at the time of this recording, it's being widely reported that Bishop Athanasius Schneider will not be in attendance for. That's not surprising, since he wrote some of the scathing letters to the public back in 2019 about Francis's ecumenical dialogue project. And as it's being reported, Schneider will himself be at a conference of some kind instead. Don't be surprised if he gets in some kind of trouble for that, by the way, since there will be absolutely seen as a snub of Francis by Schneider's adversaries. The meeting Francis is attending is in the Kazakh capital of Nur Sultan, which is not far from Astana, where Schneider is an auxiliary bishop. So far in his trip to Kazakhstan and an early stop in that country, Francis threw traditional believers of all creeds under the bus. This might not go over as well with his allies present with him as he hopes, honestly. It's kind of a crass thing to do. From the modernist rag Our Sunday Visitor, we get this headline. Pope, religions must be purified of extremism, self-righteousness. If you think he's about to compare traditional Catholics by implication to some of the worst figures in modern history, yes, you would be correct. With shepherds like this, who needs external enemies? Persecutors are the ones who are supposed to be guiding us to heaven. From the article, quote, it is time to realize that fundamentalism defies and corrupts every creed. Time for open and compassionate hearts, the Pope said September 14th at the plenary session of the Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions. We need religion in order to respond to the thirst for world peace and for the thirst for the infinite that dwells in the hearts of each man and woman, he said. On the second day of his visit to Kazakhstan, the Pope addressed 80 religious leaders and hundreds of delegates participating in the interreligious meeting September 14th to the 15th in the Palace of Independence, a blue glass trapezoid-shaped building in the heart of the Kazakh capital of Nur Sultan. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. The Congress, which is held every 3 years, was the initiative of Kazakhstan's first president, Nur Sultan Nazarbayev as a way of promoting dialogue among religions, the Congress's website stated. It also aims to prevent, quote, the use of religious feelings of people for the escalation of conflicts and hostilities. That's what he's accusing trads of, basically. In his formal talk to the Congress, Pope Francis said that, quote, authentic religiosity is needed to fight fundamentalism and extremism in religion, and to show the world that it has no reason to distrust or have, quote, contempt for religion as if it were a destabilizing force in modern society. Religion, he said, is, quote, not a problem, but part of the solution for a more harmonious life in society, end quote. Lies, lies, and more lies woven in with some truth, because that's how you sell lies. It is true that religion is part of the solution to have a more harmonious social life. In fact, it's the main part of the solution. True social peace and justice and international peace and the rest of it comes as a consequence of spreading the gospel and of radically transforming lives through salvific message of Christ and the work of his true church. Not from false ideas spread and tolerated with a shrug, because those ideas about God lead people to an eternity in the pit. I don't make the rules. Our Lord said he was the only way to the Father, not that he was the privileged path, that he was the only way to the Father. That's clear enough for me. So yes, liturgical chaos and abuse of the most blessed sacrament in the altar is permitted, widespread it seems, while the faithful are slammed by Francis. Heresy abounds. Will you do anything about it? There needs to be more action than just preparing for the church to go underground, which may not happen until the man of sin arrives, and more than just seeking sanctity. Have you recently written to your bishop about liturgical chaos you've witnessed in your diocese? You can cite Francis's anti-traditional Latin Mass documents in your letter by quoting the sections of that document that call for the new Mass to be said with respect and dignity. You can say that there needs to be submission to the Holy Father on this if you want. You might not get a response, or you might get some evil that's happening corrected. It entirely depends on the bishop in question, but at least it's worth a try. Now let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, please. Have you seen the worse things than the priest on his bike, or that yoga mass I started with, or that beach mass I did a video about a few weeks ago? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help, as does sharing these messages on social media. That helps a lot as well. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.